knowledge means to know.
.x.
Knowledge brings wisdom, and from that brings a perfect understanding. Actually, understand that.
It's time. I'm so blackity black, skin look magically waxed. Since pun had the Mac in the back of the act, my skin black as my gap, my hair in nappity naps. Came from scholars due to knowledge, these actual facts. And they don't like that, my hair twist and braids. And they don't like that my fist is raised. And they don't like that, I uplift and praise the most gifted ways my ancestors gave love. Blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice.
All right, welcome back in, man. We moving and grooving, shaking and baking, man. It's a live show, October 25th. It's Urban View Mornings, top of the hour, all zeros across the board. Check your time zones, check your speed. If you're driving, it's 8 o'clock in the east. It's Dr. Greg Carr. It's Lamont King. It's you disrupting all morning radio algorithms, live and direct.
All right.
All right, we got company. Let's check the cameras. Yes, yes, please let the honorable man in.
We definitely need to talk. I think this is your frat. In addition to everything else, it's your frat, brother.
That's what I heard. I'm aware that this gentleman has represented Virginia's 3rd Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives since 1993. Prior to his service in Congress, he served in the Virginia House of Delegates from 1978 to 1983 and the Senate of Virginia from 83 to 93. This is Congressman Bobby Scott joining us this morning, serving as the ranking member of the Committee on Education and Workforce. He also serves on the Committee on the Budget, where he's a leading voice on fiscal policy. Good morning. It is an honor and pleasure to have you.
Might add that one of our most effective communicators, because in addition to being a policy wonk, he can translate that stuff for the people, as Joe Madison, his friend, wants where the goats can get it. So, Congressman, we glad to have you, especially in the corridor right now, man. How you doing?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Joe Madison. I was president of the Newport News, Virginia NAACP when he was executive director of the Detroit, Michigan NAACP. So I knew him for a long time.
Yeah, man.
A great man, great activist.
No question. It would say the same thing about you, man. And as many times as man. So those battles go back, man. As old folks, you digging in the crates to get that one, man. That's all right. Congressman, what's going on in Virginia, man? How's the early voting going? You were telling us, but please share with the audience.
Early vote. People are voting in Virginia. We've had early vote. We had 2 years when we had a Democratic majority in the House of Delegates and State Senate with a Democratic governor, and they took advantage of it. They'd been doing voter suppression for a long time, and in those 2 years, they passed a lot of legislation. I mean, they even repealed the death penalty. When I was in the State Senate,
wow.
I remember a vote was 38-2 in order to expand the death penalty. They repealed the death penalty. During those years, that improved health care, but they really gun safety, but they really went to town on voting rights. One was early voting, Sunday voting, a Virginia Voting Rights Act where they can oversee voting changes. I mean, a lot of things, but the early voting is they scaled back. Photo ID. You don't need the photo part of it anymore. You can use about any kind of ID. But they really made it much easier to vote. As a matter of fact, we were listed as one of about the 45th hardest place to vote out of 50 states. 45 were easier to vote than Virginia. And after those 2 years, we went up in the easiest dozen.
Wow.
Because of two years. And that's the kind of thing that can take place on a national level, and all over the states. They've been doing voter suppression. And that's one of the things we've got to look at, because if Trump gets in, he'll have the Supreme Court locked up for the next generation.
Yes, sir.
And they've been chipping away, not all at once, just chipping away at the Voting Rights Act a little bit. They took a big chunk out of it, Shelby v. Holder, a little over a decade ago. Yes. But it's South Carolina, they had a case where you could prove that the redistricting map was discriminatory.
Yes, sir.
But you could not prove that it was discriminatory intentionally against blacks. They could say that we were intending to discriminate against Democrats.
So when they moved all those people from Nancy Mace's district into Jim Clyburn's district, they could say, "Oh no, it was just politics, huh?"
It was politics. It was Democrats, and the Supreme Court says partisan gerrymandering is okay.
My God.
And if they read the script during the legislative process, it says this is designed to help Republicans and hurt Democrats. And in the process, they hurt African Americans. This Supreme Court said, well, that's okay. That's okay. So they chipped away, so making it very difficult to prove discrimination. And if Trump gets elected, everybody believes that Alito and Thomas will resign.
Yes, sir.
And be replaced by somebody in their 50s.
Yes, sir.
Which gives them 5 judges under 60 years old. And if you figure they're leaving about 80, that gives them 20 years of a right wing with a right wing extremist court. And nothing you can do about it. And if we lose one of the next 5 elections in those 20 years, they could reappoint and essentially reset the clock. And so they can continue chipping away at our right to vote and the right to discriminate. I mean, they got the right to discriminate so mixed up that, when I was growing up, if I went to a bakery and said, bake me a cake, and said, no, we don't bake cakes for people like you.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm a victim of discrimination.
Yes, sir.
Now they say if the baker has to bake the cake, he is the victim of discrimination.
Wow.
And the Supreme Court sided with him.
Yeah.
Now, how messed up is that?
Yeah.
Now,
oh, man.
We cannot allow this Supreme Court to go further. We need to make sure that Kamala Harris is elected so that she will be making the appointments. In fact, if people who stayed at home in 2016 had gone out and voted in Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee.
Yes, sir.
And we had won Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton would have made those appointments.
That's right.
And all those voting rights decisions, all those discrimination decisions, and affirmative action would have gone the other way.
No question.
But of course, Hillary Clinton said some obnoxious things about blacks and criminal justice.
Yes.
Okay, she did.
Yeah.
Okay.
No
question. So we shot ourselves in the foot by letting Donald Trump make those 3 appointments, and look what we got.
That's right.
Well, we can't wait for perfection.
No.
And
right.
We can't allow the worst things to happen to the Supreme Court just because we're not totally satisfied.
That's right.
So the Supreme Court, voting rights, discrimination laws. What happened? People want to know what happened to that $20,000 student loan forgiveness.
Yeah, talk to us about that, Congressman, because you've done so much work on education. People get confused about that. Could you walk us through that a little bit?
Well, during the Trump administration, there's a thing called public service loan forgiveness.
Yes, sir.
You worked for a public service, a government agency, nonprofit for 10 years. You can get all of your student loans, federal student loans, forgiven.
Yes. We talked to Secretary Cardona last week, actually, about that. It looks like they've ramped that up again. Huh?
Under Trump, 99% of the people that thought they had completed their 10 years applied for discharge. 99% of them were turned down.
What? Wow. What?
99%. Under Biden, 1 million people have had their loans discharged. I talked to a state legislator here the other day. She said she had her loans 6 figures. Over $100,000 in loans were forgiven because she'd been a teacher for 10 years.
I feel like she called here.
Well, that's the kind of difference in attitude. They have been forgiven if a school closed suddenly, if you got cheated, if they defrauded you. This administration has been forgiven right and left. Millions of students, hundreds of billions of dollars forgiven because they are complying with the law. Trump didn't do any of that. We need to make sure, as we're doing that, we need to make sure that the reason this student loan crisis started isn't the fault of the students. It's because of the policy, federal policy. When I was in college, a Pell Grant covered 80% of the cost of going to a state college.
Wow.
80%.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Tuition room and board. You could work a part-time job during the school year, summer job, and get through college, no debt. You could work your way through college. Now you can work 40 hours a week all year and still not come out. You need a massive loan to get yourself through college.
Absolutely.
So that's where the student loan problem comes, and these people are coming out with $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in loans. $20,000 is a fairly modest amount to come out of school with in terms of loans. So it's not the student's fault.
Yes, sir.
We need to increase the Pell Grant to get it back. We're trying to, under Biden, he was on course to double in the Pell Grant till the Republicans took over the House. Yeah, they're level funding everything. If Kamala gets back in there, we're going to get back on track to doubling the Pell Grant, so you don't have to take out as much loan.
Wow.
We're going to have legislation to significantly reduce the interest on the loan, so the payment you make, more of it goes to the actual principal, not the interest.
Yes.
We're going to beef up the. They've already beefed up the. And this administration has been sued every time they try to do something.
Yes.
They've cut the payments under the income-based programs. They've cut the payments in half. So this administration, that not only helps those who got loans, but it also helps those who are thinking of going to college.
Yes, sir.
You know, hey, well, maybe I can pay off this loan. Maybe it won't be so burdensome.
That's right.
And make it easier to pay off the loan. So on the student loans, and the colleges need help, particularly HBCUs. When I was chairman of the committee for 4 years, in those 4 years, I got the HBCUs over $6 billion.
$6 billion.
So not Trump.
A lot of it was during COVID.
Yes, sir.
Every time there's a COVID bill, I say, well, stick something in there for the HBCUs.
Come on,
they need help.
Because I thought that was Trump that did that. It wasn't Trump that did that.
I think it was Scott, not Trump.
Well, one of them was when Trump was president. That was the loan forgiveness. That was about $1 billion. And I tell you how that happened. Lamar Alexander and I was chair of the committee, Republican in Tennessee, was chair of the committee in the Senate. I'm chair of the committee in the House, and we're negotiating the thing. And he wanted a little something, and I said a little something, and I put on the table, well, let's do the forgiveness, because he's with COVID, they can't pay these loans.
Yes, sir.
So let's forgive them all. And he wanted what he wanted, and I got what I wanted.
Yes, sir.
$1 billion.
So it all points back to you.
Trump signed the bill. Okay, but he didn't have anything to do with it getting in there.
Come on now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make it plain.
After that, every time there was a bill, we had help. To give you an idea of how much money there is, you know, all politics is local. I got 2 HBCUs in my district.
Yes, sir.
Hampton University and Norfolk State.
Yes, sir.
Both of them got $100 million more than they were scheduled to get.
Come on.
During
Come on.
4 years I was chairman.
Come on.
$100 million.
Come on.
Okay, so you know, if I'm chairman again, we can get back on track.
Yes, sir.
I haven't been chairman. Haven't been chairman for the last couple of years.
Yes, sir.
Because the Republicans took over. So we can do this. We can make college more affordable. But you got to be intentional about it.
Yes, sir.
But I think one of the things that is most important is we don't let our voting rights slip away, because in your civil rights slip away, people have, it's like abortion. They didn't kill Roe v. Wade all at once.
No, sir.
They've been chipping away at that thing for 50 years, ever since the first decision. They've been kind of chipping away at it.
That's right.
And finally, they knocked it off.
Yeah.
And now it's so bad that people who medically need an abortion, some of them have life exceptions. If your life is in jeopardy, you can finally get the abortion. But your life has to be in jeopardy. You got to wait until your condition progresses, until you're at death's door. Then they can do the procedure. Well, regrettably, they're finding out in Georgia that they didn't time it right in a couple of cases. And people died, and they label it preventable, because if they had gone ahead and done it when they knew they had to do it, people wouldn't have had to die.
Yes, sir.
And you wonder what kind of legislators would vote for stuff like that.
Well,
do they care about people?
They don't care.
Yeah.
Well,
this is not your freedom and your right to make your own decisions. But I mean, what kind of legislator would? And have you heard any Republican say, Oh man, I didn't mean I didn't know it would do all that. We gotta revisit this stuff.
No,
No, all
nope.
they're talking about is states' rights. Let
That's
the
right.
states decide. And let me tell you something. Y'all aren't old enough, but when I was growing up in the 1960s, only people talking about states' rights were the segregationists that
Yes,
didn't
sir.
want it, that did not want to integrate the schools.
Yes,
Say
sir.
that. Say that.
States' rights is a battle cry for those that want to deny your civil rights.
That's right.
Now all of a sudden you have a right under Roe v. Wade, and they start crying states' rights. Well, that means they don't want you to have the right. And you can see what they did with what some of the states did with it.
Well, you saw
They
what you all
have
did.
denied you.
You saw what y'all did
Yeah,
in Virginia.
well,
I mean, had it
Yeah.
not been, like, say, the 2-year window you talk about, when the Democrats controlled the delegates, you were able to ensconce some rights, and no Youngkin wanted to take it away. But in November 23, after Dobbs, Virginia came out to vote like, hell no, y'all not going to, you stopped that
that's
15-week attempt.
and we took over the legislature
Yes, sir.
and sent Youngkin bills like you have a right to contraception. And the MAGA people made him veto that bill.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just all kinds of health care, gun safety, right to abortion, criminal justice, sent him all kinds of stuff. And he had, for the first 2 years, didn't have to do that because all those bills were killed in the Republican House of Delegates. But now that when the Democrats took over the House and they were starting to pass this stuff, he had to deal with it, and he kind of regrettably had to show what he was. Can you imagine? You have a right to contraception. I mean, that thing is that Supreme Court case came out in the 1960s.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, Congressman,
and all of a sudden he's vetoed it.
That's crazy.
Congressman Bobby Scott from Virginia. I live in Maryland, and so we get a lot of commercials, news, and TV about you know your down ballot races, and very contentious. I heard something coming in this morning how there was an organization that was successful at kicking 1,800 names off of the voting rolls, but then it made it to the court, and they put a stay on that and said we'll address that after, because the question was were they illegal citizens or whatever the language was. But how, with contentious down ballot races that you have going on in your state, how are you able to cut through the messaging and the mess?
Well, we have in down ballot races, we have local races, mayor, city council, school board. But the case you've indicated is they have knocked people off the voting rolls. Now, when we pass motor voter, part of that is you can't kick people off the rolls 90 days before an election.
Right.
Because if you get kicked off, you ought to have the opportunity to get it straight.
That's right.
And right before the election isn't enough time. Last time Youngkin tried that, he kicked a bunch of people off. Half the people he kicked off were actual voters. They have identified people who have been voting for years who have been on that list to be kicked off. So that's still being litigated in terms of whether or not he broke the law when he knocked people off the list. But this is part of their strategy to suppress the vote. You just make it harder to vote, and you get the sense that they don't believe they can win a fair election, but if they can keep the other side from voting, they got a shot. And that's been their strategy for the last few years.
Yes, sir.
And our defense against that is to vote.
Yes, sir.
Make sure they don't get in a position where they can strip our votes, and they will do it. I mean, they're doing it. Look, you look at the string of Supreme Court cases. It's just a mess. Every time you turn around, it makes it harder and harder to enforce your right to vote. And the South Carolina case that you mentioned, where they messing around with the redistricting, the court found in that case that the black community was discriminated against. But they said that since the intent was to discriminate against Democrats, that it was okay. They found in Alabama 2 years ago
Yes.
that the redistricting was discriminatory, but they said, it's too close to the election, so go ahead and elect people illegally. Well, why would you allow that? you should have said we're not going to have an election if you can't do it right.
That's right.
And that was the value of pre-clearance, because
Yes.
it would never have gone into effect
Yes.
if you could not prove it was not discriminatory. And the burden on that was on the state. And so they never would have had an illegal plan to even talk about, because it never would have been pre-cleared. In the South Carolina case that was approved, never would have gotten through pre-clearance because the court even found that it was discriminatory. So obviously they couldn't find that it was free of discrimination.
Yeah.
It never would have seen the light of day.
Well,
But the Supreme Court decisions, one right after the other, and that's just why it is so important to win this election, to make sure that the next appointments are not made by Donald Trump. Donald Trump appointed dozens of judges
yes.
that on confirmation would not say whether or not Brown v. Board of Education was properly decided.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like there's some controversy on whether or not we ought to have public schools can be segregated.
That's
Would
insane.
not say whether Brown v. Board of Education was properly decided. Now, you can imagine if they can't figure that one out, you can imagine what their views are on voting on voting rights, discrimination, and everything else.
Well,
Yeah.
Congressman, I mean, of course, the state you're from, the home of Spotswood Robinson and Oliver Hill, nobody knows more about how recalcitrant these white supremacists will be than Virginians. I mean, hell, Prince Edward County, what was it, 5 years? They just simply said, we're going to not go to school.
The language in the Supreme Court was that you have a right to education, and when the right is important, and the right when the state undertakes to provide education, where the state undertakes to provide it, is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. Virginia saw the thing where it undertakes it. So if you don't provide any education, you're not discriminating.
You're not discriminating because you don't even have school.
That's a good one.
You don't have school. So every time they ordered a school to be integrated, they would just close the schools. It's called massive resistance.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And they closed the schools in Prince Edward County for a long time.
Yes, sir.
Norfolk, I think Arlington and Charlottesville.
My
And
God.
finally they repealed it and decided, y'all got to comply with this, with the court orders,
I tell you
and
what.
just integrate the schools.
My God.
But and let me tell you, that's what happens in states' rights.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Yes,
When
sir.
states get to do it. That's why this thing, when he says, oh, everybody loves states' rights, no. The segregationists like states' rights. Those opposed to civil rights like states' rights. Those that support civil rights don't like states' rights. We like Brown v. Board of Education, a federal mandate that says from the federal government you got to integrate the schools. Roe v. Wade, that you have a right to abortion on a federal level, mandated by the federal government.
Yes.
You don't have a right. States don't have a right to undermine your rights. And when you start talking states' rights, and he's been getting away, he says it real quick, like
That's right.
you don't listen real carefully.
That's
it
right.
sounds like, well,
Yeah.
that sounds reasonable. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. All right.
This is a battle cry of the segregationists.
Yes,
Anybody
sir.
read history?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not enough.
Not enough.
Thank you this morning, though.
Thank you.
Amen. Hey,
Yes, sir.
Congressman Bobby Scott, man, we appreciate you.
We really do,
leading
man.
voice in Congress, leading voice in reforming our nation's criminal justice system, and just all around solid
And
guy,
we're with
man.
you. Next time we come
Yeah.
back, we'll ask you about this tactic of delay. Maybe throw the damn election into the House of Representatives, and God knows at that point.
Yeah.
So
Appreciate
One
you.
advantage we have in this go round is that the administration, Joe Biden is president.
yes,
Last time Donald Trump was president and had the vice president up there. Thankfully, Pence didn't do what he was told.
yes,
He did what was right,
yes.
and we had a transfer of power. I started to say peaceful transfer of power.
You were
But
there.
after that violent riot,
Yes.
you can't say that.
Can't say
Yeah.
that.
But we finally got it done.
Okay.
But
And thanks. I know we
do
kept
the
you a
best
little
we
early.
can.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We know we kept you over, and thank your staff, Congressman. And your
Yeah.
time is so valuable. Thank you for joining us
Appreciate
this morning,
you.
though,
Yes.
man. Yeah, we'll
to
talk
see
to you
you.
soon. Yes, sir. Always.
All right. We'll take a
Look
break
forward.
and be
Yes,
back
sir.
with more
Thank you.
Urban View Mornings.
You're listening to Urban View Mornings on Sirius XM Urban View. We'll be right back.